So I want to talk about Andor season 2. The trailer just dropped. Looks like it's going to be coming out pretty soon, which is I think as a marketing. This is just a quick little observance, but I think as a marketing technique, I think it's a lot smarter for companies to start doing this. This is kind of the Bethesda approach. If you remember that back in the day, Bethesda used to do trailers a couple of months before a game would drop. And in the last few years, especially with things like Elder Scrolls 6, you're getting trailers years and years and years away from a game coming out. So it's a lot smarter to do it like this. You come out with a trailer, and then a couple of months later, we get to all enjoy it. This is a much smarter marketing campaign. It does better for the overall show. But that's just a quick observance. I do want to say that I think overall it does look good. And I do know that I have some of my opinions that I've said on this channel are kind of against Andor. I'm not saying that Andor is a bad show. Quite the opposite, actually. Andor is a pretty good show. I've really enjoyed it. I thought that it was a really good story. I think Cassian Andor was the most interesting character in Rogue One. Rogue One was a pretty well done movie for the Star Wars universe. So I'm not going to pretend like I don't like the show, even though I've had some negative things to say about it in the past. It looks good. It looks really good, actually. I think there's a lot in there that's kind of calling back towards Rogue One, which I think is a smart idea. Tony Gilroy seems to really get this audience. And even though financially Rogue One was not a success, and we do have to understand that this is, okay, I'm going to say something and I'm going to say it in the risk of sounding like a Disney shill. I'm not. I think Disney's ruined Star Wars. They have flippin' ruined it. But I do have to admit, this is actually pretty interesting that they were willing to make this show. They were willing to make a season 2 of a show that financially was not a success. There is obviously somebody that's making these decisions somewhere. And I don't know if that's Kathleen Kennedy. I doubt it. I don't know who it is, but there is somebody that's making the decisions that even though they know this was a financial loser, they're still going to back the show anyway. And that's a pretty bold move, right? That's giving fans what they want, which is what we've been asking for the last 10 years. So this is definitely a move in the right direction. This is definitely a good thing overall. It's going to be some negatives. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But overall, it looks good. It's a well-made trailer. It's definitely going to be, a good continuation of the story. I do hope that this show doesn't outstay its welcome. I know that originally they were talking about 2 to 3 seasons. And then on top of that, originally they were only talking about 1 season. And then it was like 2 to 3 seasons. And then there's even been reports of all the way up to 5 seasons. So that's way past the prime of the show. These characters are aging, and the movie came out almost 10 years ago, and this show season 2 is 10 years later of a prequel. And it does look like, with some of the clothing that they're wearing in the show, that we're at the very least probably only going to get one more season after this season, or at the very most, we're probably only going to get one more season after this season. So I don't think that we have anything to worry about in that regard, but I really do hope that Tony Gilroy does not let this show go past its prime, that it doesn't outstay its welcome or overstay its welcome. That is something that shows tend to do a lot. I'm very excited. It does look really good. This is the first time I actually can say that I'm excited about something of Star Wars in a long time. So I do have some opinions, and I've made them very public on this channel. I've said things about Andor. I said that it wasn't Star Wars, and I said that, it does have kind of a slow start, and that, it's kind of only Star Wars because it's sort of copied and pasted Star Wars logos and Star Wars uniforms onto characters that otherwise don't need to be Star Wars in order for the show to work. There are issues that I do have overall with some of the characters. I want to be really clear here. Same-sex marriages and same-sex relationships and these things, that's out of the wheelhouse of this channel. That's not the stuff that I'm talking about. But the stuff that I am talking about is politics in Star Wars. And in this regard, especially knowing that Disney has, that what they themselves call the not so secret gay agenda, that that these characters are put in here specifically to fulfill their need to push ideologies out to younger people. This was representation. This wasn't something that happened naturally. The story didn't revolve around characters that specifically were what they were because the writer wanted it that way. We now know that these are forced things that are happening at Disney. We know that they're doing this on purpose. So if it feels unnatural, if it feels kind of odd that there would be a rebellion, that there would be a small group of people, and there also happens to be a lesbian relationship in there, then yeah, It feels forced because it is forced, right? They're forcing it. Disney forced it. Other than that, the show, was a little bit slow, and it definitely doesn't have necessarily a Star Wars feel to it all the way through. But it is something that fits really well into the realm of Rogue One, and I really do like the show. So I do like that. The song choice is a weird choice, especially considering the tone of the entire show. I don't necessarily think that this was a good move. Now, the reason why I say that is because, and this is actually coming from more of a YouTube stance. When you're on YouTube, if you're on TikTok, if you're on Instagram, but especially if you're on YouTube, because YouTube still has thumbnails that are seen before the video is decided to be played on somebody's phone or on somebody's computer, there is such a thing as a promise that you are giving. Whether or not you're delivering on that promise by the end of the video is something that's really important. And that's really important in all aspects, right? So this is kind of a smaller example of something that happened back in the early 2000s. There was a movie that came out called Master and Commander. And Russell Crowe, if you watch interviews with Russell Crowe, he talks about this. That movie is one of the best movies I've ever seen. I love that movie so much. But if you go and you watch the trailers for that movie when it came out, it was kind of billed as a sort of an action swashbuckling adventure. Came out around the same time as Pirates of the Caribbean. And when people went to go see that movie expecting that from the trailer, they were disappointed. They were greatly disappointed because it's sort of a slower moving movie with character development and this claustrophobic feel of being stuck on this ship while you're out there hunting another ship. And it is a really great film. It is really great, but it is not the kind of film that Pirates of the Caribbean is, which is nonstop action. There's never really a feeling that you're trapped on a boat in that movie, even when they are on a boat. It's more of an exciting swashbuckling adventure. It is just a great film all around, but it's an action film. It's a comedy film. It's kind of all of these things. And Master and Commander is a very serious film, and it wasn't billed that way in the trailers. And that's something that it hurt the movie in the long run. Now, people have gone back and they love it. And it's got a very large kind of cult following, so much so that there's even been talk of a sequel this late in the game. But still, I do want to say that it's a weird song choice. The show is not made this way. Tony Gilroy is not making the show this way. So I think that, maybe this was marketing. I don't know what this is, but it is an odd choice. It's something that I think might hurt them in the long run, because I mean, if you look at the scenes, the music is going along with scenes that they probably had to pick that had the most action in them, because there probably wasn't as much action for them to pick from. But this is not an action-packed show. This is a slower show with a slower burn and far more development of characters and story arcs. So I think that in the end, I think this is probably going to be good, but I think that was a weird song choice. I think it might have been a little bit of a mistake. When we get the final trailer, probably next month, or maybe even in April, at the beginning of April, I think that maybe the tone will be significantly different. I think that they'll probably make a change on that. But it certainly got my attention. So they did do that, but there definitely is a difference in the tone of the trailer than there is in the actual tone of the show. Also, if they do change the tone of the show, that's something that would not be good, because it wouldn't match with the previous season. And I do want to say one more thing, and I know that this is something that not everybody agrees with. I get it. It's not Star Wars. You can change the backdrop of all of these buildings, of all their uniforms. You can change the Empire symbol to a swastika, and you can rewind the clock to the 1930s or the early 40s, and the show would work just as well. This is not Star Wars. It could easily be something else, right? When you watch the original trilogy, even when you watch the prequel trilogy, maybe even more so in the prequel trilogy, it is Star Wars specifically, right? You couldn't change the names of all the characters and all these other things and then it not be Star Wars. It's Star Wars. This show, unlike Rogue One, which is where this all comes from, unlike Rogue One, which is definitely Star Wars, even if it is a veneer, like So Uncivilized says, where it's kind of a, it's a deep fake of Star Wars, but it's still, relatively good. I would make the argument that Andor is very, very much so not Star Wars. All of these bits and pieces of the rebellion could easily be an insurrection in Nazi Germany or in France or something like that. It doesn't have to be Star Wars. And I think that's still a little bit of a mistake there. I know that it's good. I know that people enjoy it. I know they enjoy the kind of adult theme of the show, which I also don't agree with in Star Wars. But overall, it's still a good show. And I know that a lot of people are like, well, this is the best thing that's come out since the original trilogy. I also don't agree with that at all. It is good, and I do enjoy it. And I know that we're not all going to agree on that. But this is not Star Wars. And the way that you can tell is that all of the backdrops can be changed, and literally the show would work as a non-Star Wars show. I mean, I'll even dare to say that if you just changed all of the stuff to the Federation and you put all Star Trek uniforms on there, this could still be an insurrection that's happening inside of Star Trek, and it still works. The story of the insurrection itself is what's important. And I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's not a Star Wars thing. You know, for whatever it is that you want to take from that, I don't think that this is Star Wars. It's still good. I'm still going to watch it, and I'm interested to see in what kind of expansion on the lore this is going to have. That might be in the positive, because let's face it, Disney has done a terrible job, and Andor is one of the few things that they've done that's pretty good. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Let me know what you think in the comments. I really want to know whether or not, I want to know a couple of things. One, do you think that this is going to be a better season or just as good? Or do you think that they've lost the magic? And I also want to know, do you think that Andor is Star Wars? Do you think that it adds to the overall story of Star Wars that has basically been under duress since the moment that Disney took it over? But anyway, let me know in the comments. I definitely want to know. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. God bless, and I'll see you next time.